What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Samuel Richards here, Common Sense Bodybuilding, and now the Common Sense Coach over on Instagram. So go check the page out. I've launched my consultation services, and coaching services will be launching next year. But today, I'm going to be making a video which I'm not going to lie, I kind of wish that I didn't have to make. Over the past few months, it's become increasingly clear that there are some fundamental issues with the sport of bodybuilding that we really need to address, and today we're going to do just that. We're going to be talking about the mortality rate, the unusually high amount of bodybuilders that are passing away, unfortunately, often due to heart issues or health complications, and if there's actually a fix. From my perspective. I will say I've watched most of the videos out there. There are some great ones. Bodybuilding and Bollocks dedicated a large part of the last podcast to this topic. There are some great guys who are trying to, advocate for safer use, such as Seth Feroci and also, I believe, Desktop Bodybuilding and Leo and Longevity. And so I just want to add my 2 cents, sort of give my meta-analysis of the situation. So we've seen it with Dallas McCarver, Luke Sando, John Meadows, George Peterson, Shawn Rhoden. These are all great bodybuilders, and I'm very much sure that there are more and more bodybuilders that aren't big names, that don't get the headlines, who are passing away. And these people have all died within a relatively short time frame, all of which were too young to pass, all of which were also high-level competitors. Whether or not they reach sort of the heights of, top 5 at the Mr. Olympia is kind of irrelevant. They're all IFBB pros, and so as such, all of them were at the top of their game. Now, there are some rare occurrences here where we've got prep protocols which come into place, and we all know that prep protocols, and drug protocols leading up to a show can get more and more severe. And there are things such as diuretics which are used, which are just generally dangerous and can lead to fatalities. But I want to talk broader about the health issues among bodybuilders. There's been a lot of speculation, and the speculation really at the moment is because a lot of them are heart issues, a lot of them are to do with issues which are usually associated with heavy drug abuse and steroid use, that performance-enhancing drugs and anabolic androgenic steroids are the root cause of these issues. Now, it is no secret that these drugs have heavy health implications, and pretty much everyone knows these can cause stress on the heart, enlargement of the heart, high blood pressure, high resting heart rate, your cholesterol to be fucked. It can cause liver enzymes to be fucked. It can lead to kidney disease. There are countless issues that could potentially come from use of these drugs. The problem is, as you get higher and higher in body weight, as you get towards the sort of men's open level, as with most drugs, a lot of it is sort of dependent on your weight, and at least in terms of protocols, what people are prescribing to athletes. Their assumption is the larger the human, the more amount of drugs that are needed to do the same thing. Now, this video, as a disclaimer, isn't to say that steroids are not the cause of the problem at all. Actually, I firmly believe that they're a large part of it. However, it's to draw attention to the aspects that maybe aren't quite touched on by other people. The focus is almost always on the drugs because they're the obvious, immediate, when take them out of the equation, they're the problem. However, there are so many more issues under the surface that we need to address. Otherwise, we're only skimming the surface in terms of the health implications, and it's not going to solve the deep-rooted issues there are. Now, as I mentioned, I do believe that steroids are a large part of this, and so I want to dedicate a little bit of this video to safer use and just to break down what it is, and in essence, how it can help. Safer use primarily refers to using the minimum effective dose of a drug. So say if you can get the desired effect from 250 milligrams of testosterone per week, there is no reason to go above that, full stop, absolutely. And also, the minimum effective dose often is the one that leads to the least health side effects. So for example, with testosterone, there's a way to manage it with other drugs or just simply with the dosage of testosterone itself, whereby you never need an aromatase inhibitor. And AI aromatase inhibitors are not intrinsically healthy. There are issues with them. They are toxic to a degree, and we can't overlook that. So the more that you can avoid having to use other drugs to compensate for the drugs you're taking, that's also going to benefit you and fit into the safer use model. Now, obviously, this is an attractive concept, and many young bodybuilders have really grasped this concept with the help of people like Victor Black and the Muscle Mentors who have risen it to popularity. However, there is still an issue to be had here. Safer use does not mean safe use, and when it comes to pushing body weight between 250 pounds to 300 pounds and competing in men's open bodybuilding and elite tier, the drug requirement for that will still not be safe, and it will be pushing the boundaries of being even able to be called safer use potentially. To be competitive at that level, the small percentages matter. So a safer use model will still come into play, however it will have less of a drastic effect on the protocol because certain more things become a necessity when you're playing in that game versus when you're in maybe the amateur leagues or you're playing in classic physique. An effective dose for a guy who's 200 pounds may be under a gram a week. However, for somebody who's 250 pounds, you may be pushing 2 grams. So there's a big discrepancy there, and so we can't say that safer use models alone are going to fix this issue. Now, there are some elements, however, which I think are immediate wins for bodybuilding through the safer use model. That's using stuff like ARBs and health ancillary drugs, which can help to mediate side effects, such as telmisartan. Telmisartan, the more and more you look into it, is pretty much a miracle drug. It helps to modulate blood pressure, it helps to affect your heart health. It just generally, it seems to be beneficial for pretty much all your organs. I will say I haven't read an extensive amount of literature on this, simply because when science is so well touted and every single source says that this is almost non-negotiable for steroid users, you know, I don't feel the need to dig deeper. I don't feel like there's any sort of skull and crossbones waiting under the surface there. So I think use of drugs and supplements in order to mitigate side effects, to manage health, is absolutely a quick win, and that's something which is a no-brainer from the safer use model, which I would hope people at these tiers and levels are already doing. Safer use is brilliant. It's amazing. It's something which I follow, I promote, my coach Josh Bridgman promotes. However, it is just safer use. It doesn't eliminate the risk, it reduces it or combats it. There are other factors which unfortunately are overlooked in this debate, and luckily enough, they are being brought into the conversation now. However, they're still very much downplayed compared to the steroid accusation. Let's talk about one of those factors, and that factor is weight. If a non-muscular 300-pound person suffered a heart attack, what do you think we blame? Weight in itself causes huge levels of stress on the body. Like, need I remind you that sleep apnea is an accepted part of this sport? It's something which I'm beginning to suffer from at 205 odd pounds. It's something which my coach is beginning to suffer from, or severe sleep apnea, he had it diagnosed as. You've got people on the Real Bodybuilding podcast, and I love all these guys. Please don't think that I'm hating on them in any way, but you can hear the heavy breathing under the microphones, and there's a reason for that, because being that heavy and that weight comes with intrinsic risks and stresses on the body. Doing something like walking becomes a real struggle when you're 300 pounds in the off season. Even when you're stage lean and you've been doing cardio, you're still not healthy. You might be fit, but that doesn't mean that that weight being carried around by your body is healthy by any means. Please, as bodybuilders, let's not start bringing in some hell for every size movement, guys. Come on, we know better. And speaking of cardiovascular activity, the stress on the joints and the body from being that weight and then doing intense physical exercise, I would go as far as to say bodybuilders push themselves into the ground as much as any other professional athlete. For the endeavour of their sport, they pummel themselves and they take their heart, their bodies to the absolute limits of capability. Even myself, I've had to extend my rest period because my resting heart rate and even my heart rate when I'm exercising just can get really high after a top set, after a max intensity set. I have to take that time to recover because my body just isn't ready. And so doing that cardiovascular activity, yes, it's better. It's a net positive. It's good. It's good that people are being active because somebody who's heavy and not active is way more dangerous. But that doesn't mean that there aren't risks from doing intense activity when you're heavier. Like, yes, it's a net positive, but there are still negatives. Do you think your heart isn't stressing more than an average person? Walking on the treadmill, doing the Stairmaster, doing running. I mean, God forbid that anybody does HIIT activity at that kind of weight. Jesus Christ. I'm glad that movement didn't catch on in bodybuilding and we still know the benefits of LISS, because if anyone's taking that heart rate to that extent, I guarantee there'll be more mortalities. Look, I'm not going to go into the issues of weight and what happens when you get heavier, because you know it. There's stress on the body and the organs, and stuff like heart attacks are going to be more likely. It's just simple. It's not something that I need to be scientific about and delve into real exact details and give you fucking studies on. We know this. We've known this for decades, guys. And yes, bodybuilders will be healthier than the equivalent person who's fat, but that does not mean they're healthy. Remember, guys, bodybuilders have a 34% higher mortality rate than the general public, and that's gonna factor in the terrible lifestyle choices of the general public. So there's still an issue here to be addressed. So let's talk about diet. Although an extremely high amount of calories are needed to sustain a body of an open competitor, for example, or even a classic competitor. Myself personally, I'm on double the government RDA. that does not mean that it's a good thing. It doesn't mean just because your body requires it to maintain where you're at, and that's positive. What that actually means is that your body does not want to be that weight. It's trying to push back. It's not natural for us to be over 200 and something pounds. We all have a natural limitation, some of which, are better than others. And these guys arguably are the people who should be in competitive bodybuilding. The likes of Keon, who, stayed natural until a certain point. However, for a lot of us, our bodies simply don't want to be that large. And so we really have to push food down in order to keep that size and even grow year on year. Now, at these calories, it's almost impossible to avoid diet-related issues. Now, that may not be the case that your sort of GI health is low. You might have a fine digestive tract. However, there will still be issues with blood work, things which will knock on into your body, because we're not meant to consume the levels of food that we do. And even if we keep our food really clean, we're still going to be getting a massive amounts of fats, massive amount of carbs, and yes, we can use drugs or supplements in order to utilize them better. But it doesn't mean that they won't naturally cause stress in the body by consuming such a large amount of food. And of course, the standard approach to this is to add something like digestive enzymes or even a GDA in order to better utilize those calories. So once again, bodybuilding, congratulations, you're turning to drugs to solve the issue. And that's something that I want to talk about. Drugs versus drugs. The numbers game that people often play. Bodybuilding at this level almost always will mean some form of skewed blood work. And Iain Valliere actually touched on this in the recent, I think it was Bro Chat, not Bodybuilding Bollocks, sorry. But he discussed the fact that, pretty much nobody would be able to compete if they did a blood test when they're on cycle on high blast. That's because, quite simply, bodybuilding at this level requires a certain level of damage to the body. You can't really do it healthily when you're the size of somebody like Iain, whether that's kidney markers, whether that's, creatinine, whether it's HDL, whatever it might be, there's going to be something in your blood work which demonstrates the fact that you're on a super physiological amount of drugs. Some people more than others. Some people have a genetic propensity not to actually have skewed health markers. Some people are really resilient, their bodies. However, also do bear in mind that just because the blood markers don't show a problem, it doesn't mean that there is no problem. This is why stuff like ECG, echocardiograms are also important. Apparently you can get a form of MRI as well, where they almost dye your blood and it shows, what's going on within your heart. And that's really important because, for example, the heart can actually grow due to anabolic use and heavy training. And this is another risk factor. So basically, there's no real way to get around the fact that if you do a blood test mid-blast, you're not going to be in perfect health. Even if you take your blood pressure, it's probably going to be in higher levels. Yes, stuff like talmosartan will help. However, mine, for example, when I'm on talmosartan, is still sort of just above normal. It's not quite in the perfect range. A few people are able to achieve that, but again, that one sole marker doesn't mean that they're perfectly healthy. There are two ways to combat these issues. There's a simple fix, a less simple fix. One avenue, the less simple fix, is to change your lifestyle and your protocol. Needless to say, this isn't the one that most people go with, right? Because it's complex. It means you have to really pull everything out. You have to reintroduce stuff. You have to analyze where your tolerance levels are at. You have to go with a low dose, risking the fact that you may lose some tissue in the process. You have to really strip everything back, basically, and try and live as optimally as possible. And quite simply, doing that, it's going to be stressful. It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to, take a lot of energy. And it's not something that a lot of people are willing to take the time to do when you're in a competitive sport and you need to be ready for the next year's competitive season. Then there's the other solution. Drugs. Again. Fuck me. Seems to be the answer all the time, doesn't it? Tools such as ultra-high supplementation of vitamins, natural supplements, whether it's taurine or NAC or whatever it is to protect the organs, to modulate all the issues that come with anabolics, that generally becomes the preferred approach. Your supplement stack grows and grows and grows to counter the issues, to the point where you're spending, well over £100 per month, 200, 300, however much it is, to moderate health. And of course, stuff like talmosartan, ARBs, even statins are included in that. If you're taking these drugs, it's going to increase that supplement stack cost. Once again, my issue is not with talmosartan or statins. As Leo and Longevity stated, they can be incredibly beneficial. And just because they're drugs, it doesn't mean they're bad for you. However, I do feel like we have a culture of masking problems. And even if those things genuinely help to combat it and can bring you healthier, I honestly don't think they're going to single-handedly suddenly make you healthy. And quite simply, my opinion on that is because I don't believe that using drugs to counter drugs actually eliminates the problem. It masks it, it combats it, it tries to reduce it. However, that initial stress is still going to exist. All you're doing is you're getting something else to try and fight it, to try and combat it. If these things single-handedly solved all our issues, or keeping blood pressure in check was all it took in order to be healthy, then every single person would be doing it in the sport because they're simple. You can just buy them alongside your steroid stack and boom, you're sorted, you got longevity. And quite simply, everyone would just use steroids. If there was a way to eliminate all the problems from steroids, why would you not take them? Why? I mean, yes, loads of people are taking them now, you know, when they're younger and younger, but it's not because they're safe. They're actually doing them in a less safe manner, often turning stuff like SARMs or pro-hormones and not even bothering with one-cycle support. So, you know, clearly that's not because suddenly everyone's realised you can just take a statin and boom, you're fine. It's because they're more accessible. Can't imagine how a 17-year-old having access to hormone manipulation could possibly go wrong. So, the big question, is there any way to make bodybuilding not dangerous, or is bodybuilding at its core dangerous? There are so many different factors, okay? There's, you know, whether you're doing this natural and enhanced, there's your use of PEDs, you know, how you implement steroids, what you choose, the compound-wise, what your doses are, your division, but I can't help but come back to the same answer, and it's yes. Even natural bodybuilders, the stresses from competitive bodybuilding are going to have an effect on their body. And I believe even stuff like Yimbin is still allowed, and that's not safe. It's safer than some things, but it's not safe. Just because something's natural doesn't mean that it's good for you. Tobacco is natural, cocaine is natural. But everything's dangerous, driving's dangerous, you step out your door, you're at risk. I like the Michael McIntyre quote on this. Like, where Australians talk about getting in the ocean around sharks. You got more chance of being killed by your fridge, mate. And that's a terrible Australian accent. And he's like, well, yes, but not when I'm in the fucking ocean. Then I have more chance of being killed by a shark. The same thing with this. Yes, stepping outside your door is dangerous. Guess what's more dangerous? Doing it while you're loaded up on steroids at 300 pounds. That's more dangerous. I don't know how you can't see that. It's compounding of problems. It's not, well, you got this problem versus this problem. You suddenly don't have a danger in stepping out your house, do you? It's like saying, well, sharks are dangerous anyway, so I might as well cover myself in blood. Standing on a ledge, dangerous. Standing on a ledge without a rail, dangerous. Peering over the side, more dangerous. Doing it with a 50-kilo dumbbell held out in front of you, good luck. I don't want to laugh, it's just the stupidity in approaching this and not realising that all of these issues play a factor and we need to combat it as a whole. This issue is really serious, and countless times I've seen people ignore it or brush it aside or blame one thing and be like, well, that's the sport. That's not the way it has to be. And I really like Fouad's take on this. Fouad Abiad said, you know, yes, I enjoy watching American football less now that they've removed all that trauma and stuff, but I still enjoy watching it. So yes, if you're a big fucker, you're taking a fuck ton of anabolic steroids, you're not taking care of your health, you're pummeling food down, those issues are going to compound. It's going to become more and more dangerous. And as you get to the heights of these people, you know, it's going to become more of a problem. Now, that's not to say the biggest, juiciest people out there are the people who are always going to be the ones who face these mortality issues. There are other factors, genetic response, you know, genetic propensity for health issues, pre-existing conditions, lifestyle choices, and just quite simply as well, luck. Luck plays a factor. Bad luck, good luck. You know, terrible fucking luck that John Meadows, somebody who stepped back, who cared about health clearly, you know, passed. It's terrible luck that Shawn Rhoden passed, somebody who really clearly did care about his health. And he had other factors such as the lifestyle stress of the court cases and the allegations. I understand that, but these things added to the risk factors, and going through those processes might not have caused Shawn's death if he wasn't in the situation he was physically. So what's the solution? There's got to be one, because we just can't keep going on like that. I love open bodybuilding. As a classic competitor, I still am a bigger fan of open bodybuilding. But it's tainted knowing that every single competitive season is potentially 2 years taken off their life, 3 years, 1 year, however much it is. It's still tainted. Greg Doucette's advocating for making a smaller open division. For these new division ideas to be successful, and I believe that they could be, there really has to be a levelling of the playing field. There has to be an incentive. The prize pool has to match the IFBB's priorities, and if it's on athlete health as well as all the other factors, they either need to make a classic/open hybrid, which has a similar prize pool to open, or they just need to level classic and open in terms of prize pools. Now, yes, there's an issue of anybody and their fucking dog choosing classic because they're not big enough for open yet. But those people won't win shows. So it's not really an issue. If we have a lineup of 50, who cares? Because 40 of them are going to be instantly discarded because they're not classic physique. Maybe they're classic open, or maybe they are open, but maybe open has a weight cap. I don't know the answer, but there needs to be an incentivization from the IFBB here. Otherwise, people are just going to go to open because currently it's got 10 times the prize pool of like any other division. And I don't see how people... There's a reason why people go from 212 to open when they're winning 212. You would not do that if the prize pool was the same. Fans will never choose downsizing, the athletes might, and that's where that's coming from. But even if we take that as not a possibility, something that's not going to happen, there needs to be more onus on the athletes, the coaches, the IFBB to manage the health of the athletes. Pre-existing conditions, history of heart disease within your family, these kind of issues, don't compete. And this is my main gripe with Iain Valliere's appearance as well on the podcast. He was saying, you know, obviously, well, CBum would never be able to compete. And CBum is incredible. I want to see him compete for as long as possible as a fan. But if your defense to performing regular health checks and making sure that your athletes are healthy is that unhealthy athletes wouldn't be able to compete, null and void defense. People with pre-existing conditions are just going to be more at risk generally. And yes, that's his choice. That's his choice. I'm not saying he's wrong for competing. He's the greatest there is and likely ever will be in classic physique. But it doesn't mean that it's healthy or that it's good long term. Even people who are genetically blessed face issues. Even people with perfect bills of health face issues. So what makes you think that somebody who's more predisposed to these problems will not end up with these problems? The solution is that people who are more at risk do not compete. Safer use becomes the norm. Maybe we do blood tests for athletes. Maybe we get them to do regular checks with doctors, and maybe that is the solution. If it doesn't work in theory, we need to figure out how we can make it work or find another solution, because we can't just let this slide anymore. Classic is on a trajectory to become just as popular as open. Make the prize pool reflect that. That's another quick win. Men's physique is just plummeting in popularity. It's lost its place. What can we do about that? Is there something we can do about that? Because surely the IFBB doesn't want a dead null and void division, right? So what can we do to make that more entertaining? I personally think we need to rip apart men's physique, take off the board shorts, cut them shorter, and make it more of a fitness model contest. Maybe that will reinvigorate it. I don't know. But we need to figure out ways to make that more successful if you want to have these healthier divisions, or even just rip it up and start the divisions again below open bodybuilding. Restructure them. If I was to say what would be optimal, it would be to do all of those things, to do a 360 health check every single time somebody reapplies for their pro card, which they have to do annually. 360 health check involves an ECG, an MRI, involves a stress test in terms of on a treadmill and stuff. It involves scans, it involves blood work, and it involves a comprehensive doctor's overview. That would be my recommendation alongside multiple blood tests per year. However many, I don't know, but a 360 health check is going to be the most comprehensive and probably the most lenient to account for the fact that they're bodybuilders that we could do. I believe that the IFBB should finance that until the point where they're paying their athletes more. We just can't afford the added money, honestly. I think this is the least they can do as a division, or they at least find a way to make it more affordable or more attainable to be able to do that kind of stuff. Key message here out of all of this is that the sport is not healthy. Many still neglect their health during this process, and even the stuff they could be doing to do it healthier, they're not. So first of all, focus on the quick wins. Second of all, we need to structurally look at the sport and figure out how we can make it so that it's not a guarantee that you're going to have some problems along the line if you're an open bodybuilder or if you're pushing the envelope, or maybe we reassess how much we even push that envelope. I don't have the answers. I felt like I needed to make a video and give my input on this and talk about the wide range of issues that there are in the sport. And there are many more. There's the prep protocols I hinted at. There's tons of issues that lie beneath the surface. These are just sort of the top three in terms of drug use, weight, diet, you know, all the things which I think are causing the most amount of problems for these people and for their overall health. But together and as an industry, I really hope that we can find them. I hope that we can find a compromise. It's going to be difficult for any top level pro to hear this stuff, especially if you play the mass game, because that's how you're successful, right? Maybe you don't have the perfect aesthetic proportions like Phil Heath or Shawn Rhoden, and you need to compete on mass, but maybe this sport needs to be refined to the genetic elite, and I by no means believe that I'm part of that mix. You know, I'd have to reassess my own potential, but, you know, it's something which we need to work out together for the benefit of everyone, because I'm sure that we all want to see our friends, our loved ones, survive beyond 40 and live to see the benefits of what they've worked towards for the early part of their life. You know, these people are working their fucking arse off, killing themselves. They're not even living long enough to see their children grow up, to see their empires built, to be able to even have the chance to exit the sport in the first place on their terms. Look guys, it's a really long one, but I really need to delve into it. As I say, Classic Coaching is now live. That's the Instagram handle. Managed to bag that one. Or you can drop me an email at sam@classiccoaching.co.uk and book in for one of the first 5 consultation slots. They're either an hour or 2 hours long, require comprehensive everything, overview of your training, blood work, all that kind of stuff, so that I can give you perfect tailored advice for where you are, where you want to go. And this is a precursor to full coaching services. As I say, I don't feel like I'm in a place yet to offer that full ongoing service, but I will set myself up for next year. But this enables you to get one-on-one time and for us to discuss specific issues to you. I hope you like this video. It's one that I don't want to have to make, and maybe it's not enjoyable to watch, but it's something which had to be said. Like, subscribe, and there'll be more content coming your way regarding safer use and how to bodybuild with some common sense, and hopefully avoid some of these issues in future. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.